If you had told me at the start of 2026 that Obsession would become one of my favorite movies of the year, I would have called you insane. Yet somehow, here we are. Not only has Obsession become one of the best horror movies of 2026, it might be the biggest surprise of the year. And yes, I'm saying then the year that also gave us Project Hail Mary. I say that because a film with this budget put into it has absolutely no right being this good. Every time I revisit it, I find another detail that makes me appreciate it even more. I actually wanted to make this video weeks ago, but I kept running back into the same problem. I couldn't stop thinking about the movie long enough to organize my thoughts. Obsession isn't just a movie you watch, it's a movie that sticks with you long after the credits rolled. The genius of Obsession is that it takes one of the most universal human experiences and turns it into a nightmare. Think back to the first time you had a crush. The nerves, the awkwardness, the fear of rejection. Most people know exactly what it feels like. But Obsession asks a simple and terrifying question. What if you could guarantee that person would love you back? That's where we meet Bear, a quiet employee at a radio store who has a crush on his coworker Nikki. Desperate for a chance with her, he makes a wish that will make her love him more than anyone else in the world. At first, it seems like a dream come true. The relationship grows, they get closer, and everything appears perfect. But slowly, almost without you noticing, the fantasy begins to rot from the inside. And that's where the film's true brilliance comes in. Obsession pulls off what I like to call audience trickery. It convinces you that you're watching a story about romance, wish fulfillment, and personal growth. Then the cracks begin to appear. Small moments feel off, characters start acting strangely, the situation becomes harder and harder to justify. Before you realize it, the film isn't about catharsis, but it has transformed into something completely different. What starts as a horror movie becomes a moral tragedy. The central question is devastating. Is another person's freedom worth your own happiness? The movie never gives you an easy answer, and that's exactly why it works. Instead of relying solely on jump scares, Obsession forces the audience into an uncomfortable ethical debate that stays with you long after the movie ends. Which brings us to Bear. Over the past few weeks, Bear has become the center of some pretty intense online debate. And honestly, I understand why. Objectively speaking, he is the villain of this story. When Nikki briefly breaks free and starts revealing what is happening, his first instinct isn't to save her, but it's to ask, what's so bad about being with me? That's horrifying. But the uncomfortable truth is that you also understand why. Bear begins as an ordinary guy. Awkward, lonely, desperate for connection. He's someone most people can recognize. Then little by little, that loneliness transforms into obsession. No pun intended. His desire to be loved becomes more important than the well-being of everyone around him. He's completely wrong. The movie never excuses him, but the fact the audience are still debating his actions proves how well written the character is. Bear feels human, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. Then there's Nikki. This may sound like recency bias, but I genuinely think Indy Narevet delivers one of the greatest horror performances of the century. I knew her from Superman and Lois, where she was fine, I guess. Here, she is operating on a completely different level than everyone else. The diner scene alone should be enough to put her into award conversations.
Oh no, don't do that!
Watching Nikki desperately maintain her lies before completely unraveling is one of the most intense sequences I've seen all year. Every emotion feels authentic, every shift feels believable. Even when she's lying, I was consistently questioning whether she was telling the truth or not. And then there's the horror elements. The violence lands because the performance sells every second of it. The scene involving Sarah is genuinely disturbing. Not just because it's gruesome, but because it feels emotionally real. Even Nikki's smile becomes terrifying. There's something deeply unsettling about it. And the fact it wasn't heavily choreographed only makes it feel more authentic. Honestly, I could make an entire video just about Nikki. She's one of the best horror characters I've seen in years, without a doubt. What's equally impressive is that the supporting cast never feels like filler. Cooper Tomlinson's Ian feels like a genuine friend trying to help Bear avoid a heartbreak. Megan Lawless gives Sarah far more depth than a lesser movie would. Even Andy Richter's Carter instantly feels like a real person. These characters don't exist solely to serve the plot. They feel like they have lives outside of this story. That authenticity makes the world feel real. And because the world feels real, every tragedy hits harder. The pacing deserves special praise too. One of the easiest ways to tell whether a movie is working is whether you're consistently aware of the runtime. During Obsession, I completely lost track of time. For comparison, I recently watched Backrooms. There are sections of that movie that are incredibly effective, but the pacing becomes uneven as it moves towards the finish line. Obsession is the direct opposite. Every scene matters. Every conversation either develops a character, advances the plot, or reinforces the film's themes. Nothing feels wasted. Nothing feels padded. It's one of the most tightly paced horror movies I've seen in years. The screenplay is just as impressive. The dialogue feels natural. Characters talk like actual people instead of movie characters delivering exposition. Whether it's trivia night, Ian's party, or casual conversations between friends, everything feels grounded. That realism becomes crucial because the horror isn't built around cheap jump scares. It's built around human fears, rejection, loneliness, dependency, possession. At its core, Obsession is essentially a modern monkey paw story. It's a cautionary tale about getting exactly what you want and discovering that the reality is far worse than the fantasy. That's what evolves it beyond traditional horror. Now, we have to talk about the man behind all of this, Curry Barker. This guy has serious talent. Simply put it, this man has the sauce. Even something as simple as the title card demonstrates a level of creativity that immediately grabs your attention. Visually, this movie is packed with clever storytelling choices. What stood out to me the most was the use of shadows. Throughout the film, darkness isn't just an aesthetic tool, it's storytelling. As Nikki's situation becomes more disturbing and Barrett's decision become harder to defend, shadows begin to dominate the frame. The visual language constantly reinforces the themes without ever feeling forced. It's subtle, it's effective, and it's exactly the kind of filmmaking confidence that separates good directors from great ones. What's fascinating is that Barker's background isn't traditional Hollywood. Like Kane Parsons, who did Backrooms, he started as a YouTuber. He made comedy sketches with friends, and while that might seem unrelated to horror, I actually think it's one of the biggest strengths. Comedy and horror operate on similar principles. Both rely on timing, both rely on tension, both rely on audience expectations and sudden reveals. When you understand one, you're often better equipped to understand the other. Jordan Peele is probably the best example of this, and in some ways, Obsession reminds me of Get Out. Not because the stories are identical, but because they share a similar philosophy. Both movies use humor to lower your guard, both create characters you enjoy spending time with, and both know exactly when to stop being funny and become absolutely terrifying. When Obsession decides to go all in on horror, it completely commits. And just like Get Out, you leave the theater asking the same question: what does this filmmaker do next? Thankfully, we already know. Barker has Anything But Ghosts coming next year with Blumhouse and Aaron Paul attached. The premise follows two con artists who run a fake ghost hunting empire until they encounter a real supernatural threat. In lesser hands, that concept could easily fall apart. But in Barker's hands, it sounds like something special. But that's not the project people are talking about the most. The big one is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot. When A24 announced that Barker would be developing a new movie in this franchise, reactions were complicated. Some people were excited, others immediately questioned whether the franchise needed another installment. Honestly, I understand both reactions. My first thought was simple: what is there left to do? Then I started to listen to what Barker had to say about the project. What stands out to me is that he doesn't view Texas Chainsaw Massacre as just a guy running around with a chainsaw. No, he talks about finding the humanity underneath the horror, finding emotional truth inside the violence. That's exactly what makes me interested. If anyone can bring something genuinely new to this franchise, it's probably him. And that's the real point here. Curry Barker is the real deal. If he continues making films at this level, we're eventually going to put him in the same conversations as modern horror filmmakers like Zach Cregger and Robert Eggers. Obsession isn't just a great debut, it's the kind of movie that announces the arrival of a major talent. And here's the craziest part: I genuinely don't think we are gonna get a movie this year that's gonna top this. At least in the horror conversation. I know, that is a crazy statement to make, especially since we are gonna get new movies from Cregger and Eggers respectively later this year. Those are some of my favorite creators working today. So believe me when I say this, that is just telling of how good Obsession is. It's not just a great horror movie, it's an event. Most movies come and go. People watch them, enjoy them, and move on. But every once in a while, a film breaks out of that cycle and becomes a part of the cultural conversation. Obsession has become one of those films. You can see it everywhere. Online discussions, fan theories, character debates, recommendation list. People aren't just watching this movie, they're discussing it. And honestly, I don't say this often, but you're doing yourself a disservice by not watching this movie. I can't remember the last time audiences were this united. Everyone seems to discuss it and immediately wants to tell someone about it. In a landscape dominated by sequels, reboots, superhero movies, and familiar IPs, Obsession feels genuinely original. It's bold, it's disturbing, it's emotional, it's unforgettable, and most importantly, it's proof that horror can still surprise us. So if you're waiting for a sign to watch Obsession, this is it. See it on the biggest screen you can find. Because years from now, when we look back at the best horror movies of 2026, this is going to be one of the films they remember. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if it ends up being the one they remember the most. For me, it's pretty simple as to why Obsession is the biggest surprise of the year. The film succeeds not just because it's a masterpiece, it succeeds because it shows us a complex narrative around devastating and thought-provoking concepts that are executed masterfully. On paper, it's just an indie movie from an upcoming filmmaker, when in reality, it's a film that sits with you. It takes a simple concept about love and obsession and transforms it into a tragedy that sticks in your mind long after the credits rolled. Very few horror movies can entertain you, disturb you, and make you question your own morality at the same time. Obsession manages to do all three, and that's really impressive. The pieces click together because everything is balanced together. The performances, the writing, the pacing, the cinematography, and the themes all feel carefully crafted with a level of confidence that most directors spend years trying to achieve. Curry Barker didn't just make himself a household name overnight, he proved that people are willing to see great movies, especially original movies. And it makes his career an exciting prospect. Whether it's anything but Ghost, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or whatever comes next, he has officially become a filmmaker worth watching. At the end of the day, Obsession is a horror masterpiece. If you're tired of the big blockbusters, I can't recommend it enough. This is a movie I cannot stop thinking about. All from the masterful storytelling, perfect performances, themes that are incredibly rich, and proof original cinema can succeed. It's the rare horror film that earns every bit of praise, and years from now, I think we'll look back at Obsession as the moment Curry Barker announced himself as one of the most exciting voices in modern horror. And for me, that's exactly why Obsession isn't just one of the best movies of 2026, it's one of the best movies of the year, no doubt. So I'm gonna give Obsession an easy 10 out of 10.